have a go at The Lobby by Charlotte Denby, and this one here by Lonesome by Miguel Stepan. So if you're just joining me now, I'm doing the Midnight Vault 2. I'm doing some live readings for us lot on the other side of the Atlantic. So if you can't get in today, there's probably another reading at some point. But Vinny Reads has been doing a lot of US and Canada stories. So today I'm gonna have a look at The Lobby by Charlotte Denby. I'm gonna do that one first. So it's just a surprise live. I didn't tag anyone or say I was gonna do it. I just thought if I've got a free moment, I'll do this live. So not to worry if you're not here, Charlotte. But yeah, it's all on my Kindle. I thought let's see what we can get done in this next hour. And again, if you can't watch the live, the repost will be around. I'm going to put them all on my stack. I didn't even check to make sure that you can all hear me. I'm just going to assume you can. Right, The Lobby by Charlotte Denby. Do you know, I wasn't going to read my own story this time because, I don't know, I just feel weird about reading my own stories. I had to go the other day at reading some of The Ring and the Spider, and I don't know, it just feels weird going over your own stuff. And then if you do feel like, oh, could have said that differently, it's too late. So I don't know, maybe not this time, maybe I'll do it next time. We'll see. We will see whether I read Blackbird. But I can see comments today, so that's an improvement. I couldn't see them last time. I just saw people saying hello, and then I saw nothing else. So Charlotte might join us in a minute. We'll see. But yeah, here we go. The Lobby. If you haven't already, do pop over to see Charlotte Denby as part of the Midnight Vault 2. I only came across this one yesterday, so it's great that I'm getting through this, and you're probably getting through a lot more stories now if there's lives that you can go to as well. Lydia held the book in her hands as though it were the last thing in the world that still knew who she was. Tap. A single drop of water landed on her hand, breaking the quietly intense moment. She looked up. How long had she been sitting here? Clearly, it had been a while. With a small, surrendering sigh, she tucked the book away in her canvas bag, affectionately, almost like an apology. She stood. Her mood sank as disappointment crept in. She hadn't managed to read a single page. She had come to the mountains to get away, and now she was as far away as she could be, even from herself. With nothing required of her for a week, her only task was simple: to become someone who could sit with the quiet long enough to finish a book. To prove that she still remembered how. So, what had she really been doing on this bench all this time? Thinking, of course. Out here in nature, in the quiet, there was space. And that space filled itself with the loudness of everything. What happened, what couldn't happen, what was lost, and what she would never find. There was also, apparently, a lot of rain. Each droplet landed on the leaves of the forest with a strange, too loud clack. Each frantic pitter-patter seemed to be matching the pace of her own thoughts. She really was lost in them these days. Where am I? Lydia loved nature. She reminded herself. Whenever her thoughts became loud, nature was the only thing that could center them. Remote, isolated, yet she felt safe. Peaceful. Although it was getting harder to find her way. Every tree looked copied and pasted from the last, as if the forest, like Lydia herself, had run out of its ideas. Something felt wrong. She should have reached the lake by now. Instead, the path sloped upward, leading her to a clearing. Lydia stood completely drenched, one elbow pinned uselessly over her bag, as if she could still deny the rain from reaching her book. She was surprisingly calm when she realized what she saw at the bottom of the path was certainly not the lake house she was staying in. It wasn't even a house anyone had stayed in this century. Waiting in the valley at the end of the path was an enormous wooden hotel with two ridiculous little turrets, almost as if the architects could not settle on a genre. Part cabin in the woods, part 1920s grandeur, or potentially home to some knights and princesses. She turned for one last look behind her, but the path, blared by the rain and gathering dark, only led to hours of shivering and second-guessing. Forward it was. Lydia pushed open the heavy wooden doors and stepped into the lobby. Entering the building offered no respite from the rain's chill. The air inside was just as heavy with the same bleakness, almost as if Lydia herself had brought the rain and the silence of the forest in with her. She barely noticed anything that might have been impressive around her. The checkered black and white floor, slightly uneven, as if whoever laid the marble squares had given up halfway through. Instead, all her attention was drawn to a man at the mahogany front desk, absorbed in some files. For a moment, she hovered uncertainly before slowly making her way across the man. He wore a white-collared shirt and a neat black bow tie, looking almost comically cinematic, as if he'd stepped out of an old film. Lydia suddenly felt as though she'd stepped into one herself. In the lobby's dim lighting, all the light seemed to gather around him. Or maybe he was the source of it. "Hi, I'm sorry to bother you. Can you help me?" The man smiled, still focusing on his papers. "Certainly, madam. I can help you." "So sorry, I was out in the rain and I'm completely lost. I meant to be on the other side of the lake, I think, and if you wish, I may summon a cab for you." "Oh, thank you, but I fear none shall come," he added pleasantly. "Not in this weather, I'm afraid." Oh, was this guy serious? Then, could I possibly stay here? I can obviously pay for the night. I just really need to get somewhere warm. He put down his papers and moved to a computer. "We have one room prepared for you, almost as if it were awaiting your arrival." A chill ran through her from the cold. Or was it his words? He slid a bronzed, ornate key around the desk, a key so ridiculously clunky that Lydia couldn't help conjuring all kinds of images about what her room door might look like. He explained that her room was on the fourth floor. Lydia, reluctant to engage further with the unsettling man, and increasingly conscious of the strange absence of any other members of staff, thanked him and moved to the elevator. The old-fashioned elevator's metal gate stood open, but it wasn't exactly inviting. Inside was an eerie, patterned carpet, unsettling details that blurred at the edges of her vision, and a mirrored ceiling that caught her eye, though she had no desire to look up and comfort her own reflection in this already overwhelming situation. She stepped inside and turned, expecting to see a panel of buttons. Her hand hovered in the air. There were no buttons. Lydia searched the ornate walls for a switch or a lever, but found nothing. Nothing. Lydia stood alone, with no way forward. "Sorry, how do you use the elevator?" she asked, making no attempt to hide the tremble in her voice. The man smiled. It was a kind, knowing smile that only unsettled her further. "Ah, then it seems it hasn't been written for you yet." "What?" He looked up. "Forgive my lack of clarity. What I meant is that the hotel is under construction. The elevator's buttons haven't been written in yet." Lydia just stared at him. Was she sick? Delirious from the rain? "Right, well, I'll just head up the stairs then." He brightened as if she'd suggested something genius. "What a fantastic idea. See if you can find any stairs. I wish you all the best." She was becoming increasingly panicked. She wanted to leave. Every instinct told her to turn around and hurl herself at the doors behind her, but she tried to focus on the positives. There is a room. She has a key. Maybe in the morning she can have a nice breakfast. Maybe there will be croissants. She slipped through a door next to the desk, bracing for more corridors. Maybe another stranger. What her feet stepped out onto was soft, wet grass. She was not inside the room. Lydia could say she'd been in plenty of rooms before, but never one where she could see the stars and moon overhead. The cold bit sharper now. It felt like standing in an ancient ruin. There were 3 walls still standing, but the 4th one had been split open, cracks running through it in a way that felt intentional. Lydia shivered, unsettled by the sense that something or someone might be watching from beyond that gap. She took a moment to believe the lack of a closed space. Outside, the building was large enough. So why was she suddenly outside here? Didn't make any sense. She shut the door and hurried back to the man at the desk. He didn't look up from his files. Perhaps I wasn't as helpful as I could have been. If you can't reach your room, it's because she hasn't written it in yet. Sorry, what? She? He hesitated. We think so. Feels like a she. Lydia placed the heavy key on the desk. Right, okay, I'm going. Lydia, you can't. She froze. She hadn't given him her name. Before she could let out any of her thoughts or screams, there was a flash. She looked up. Lightning? No. This flash lingered, stuttered. There was something unusual about it. Then it clicked. This wasn't lightning at all. It was a flicker, a glare, almost like. And the rain, yes, it was loud, but too loud. Loud in a way that echoed inside her ears, not around her. Sometimes all at once, sometimes in long pauses. Each tap. It wasn't the rain. It was someone typing. Lydia understood. Is there anyone else here? She asked, although she wasn't sure if she wanted an answer. Oh, there have been many, the man replied, sounding almost cheerful about it. Not for a while, mind you. Time isn't exactly, well, it's not punctual here. I've seen her go through many phases. She used to write a lot about Kat. I do rather miss those days. Then came the horror phase. I haven't quite recovered, to be honest. The man paused, and for a moment his cheery demeanour slipped. Once she finishes a story, they get to take the elevator and leave. It's very exclusive. It's a lot to understand. What is this hotel for? Lydia asked. It's a space for unfinished stories, Lydia. Have you ever left something unfinished? Promised you'd get back to it? Or enjoyed a story so much you dragged out the ending just to make sure it lasted a bit longer? Or let's be honest, ever let doubt or dread convince you it wasn't worth finishing at all? That's who ends up here. And you? What do you do? He smiled like someone who'd pondered this question far too often. Peaceful, resigned, maybe now amused. Who am I? I'm not sure, really. I've helped the unwritten stories. I try to make things here as easy and tidy as possible with my files and folders. It can have some negative effects, you see, being unwritten. I've seen what happens. I've filed them all away. It's what they wanted, but still they're here. So you just live here. The man frowned. Live is a strong word, Lydia. She wanted desperately to sit, to think, to breathe. But it seemed the writer hadn't offered the courtesy of writing in any furniture. A feeling of dread crept in, and more questions. Yet somehow all of this gave her answers. So, if I'm here, I'm unfinished. Yes, Some stories stay unfinished, but you've just arrived. Maybe she's taking a break. Lydia felt tears in her eyes. Some part of it understood, though she couldn't have explained why. Who is she? She is you, and you come from here. He nodded at her bag. Have you looked at your book yet? Go on, maybe you'll finally have time to do some reading while you're here. I apologize for the lack of light. For the first time since arriving, Lydia felt a strange calmness. She opened the book, noticing dampness on her cheeks, uncertain if it was from the rain or just hair, and began to read aloud. Lydia held the book in her hands as though it were the last thing in the world that still knew who she was. Tap. A single drop of water landed on her hand, breaking the quietly intense moment. Tap, tap. She looked up at me. Well, that was a great one for any writers in the room. That was The Lobby by Charlotte Denby. It's a bit Hotel California. It reminds me a little bit of Evelyn K. Brunswick's tale, Yesterday. I'm using Elwood. I thought that was actually a really good one, especially as you write in your characters and your characters are part of you. You made them. So yeah, fantastic one by Charlotte. And what I'll do now is I'll read Lonesome End by Miguel Stepan. We're actually making good time today, I think. So Miguel, if you don't know him, pop over to The Fiction Dealer. That is Miguel's publication. And he was in last year's Midnight Vault as well with I want to say room 13. I'm pretty sure that's what it was called. Right, so Lonesome End by Miguel. Let's see. Oh, we started it tricky. Right. Okay, another thank you to the guys who put the Midnight Vault together. Again, a reminder, I didn't put that in. I think they just know I'm grateful. Today's story goes in a calm yet unsettling direction. Settle in and let's travel to a lonely island with a lonely lighthouse and its keeper. Pharaoh opened his eyes to the crush of waves against the cliff. For 30 years, it was his alarm clock. A sound of home made up of the ocean's music. It was a lovely early summer morning with no clouds over the bay. A perfect time to start tending the lighthouse. A low bark drew Pharaoh's attention at once to his feet. He stood from his bed and walked over to scratch Chaplin's ears, who, as always, was staying by the door. A good boy, chap. When he straightened up, he expected the usual sharp stab in his lower back, the creak of his joints, but that didn't happen. Even the usual shoulder pain was almost non-existent. If only retirement would feel like this, he said, smiled, and began to climb from his tiny bedroom onto the top of the lighthouse. For decades, Pharaoh's days were interchangeable. He extinguished the light, ran an air horn, scratched Chaplin behind the ears, and enjoyed the views of the ocean. For 3 decades, he was diligent in his duties, waiting patiently for retirement. Then, in the middle of summer, he woke up feeling oddly great and unaware of the fact that the doors of the Midnight Vault were creaking open. And the world, or perhaps himself, went through an irreversible change. The sun was creeping over the horizon when Pharaoh put out the light at the top of the tower, before he started scrubbing and polishing the windows. The pain in his shoulder usually slowed this process down, but that morning was different. It all felt so easy, like the time when he started his job. From atop the tower, he took in the weather, standing up the collar on his greatcoat. He was used to the sharp winds, but it was mid-August. The sun should have been sharper still. Just a few more weeks. After his routine was done, he stepped into the kitchen, noticing that Chaplin wasn't there. "What's up, boy?" Fenno asked, looking toward the bedroom door where his faithful German shepherd lay. Chaplin barked him an answer, turning to the bedroom again and bumping his head into it. "I know, chap, the comfort of our bed is tempting, but we've got work to do," Fenno said, surprised at the joy in his voice. He turned to the kitchen, reached for the kettle, and set it on the stove to make a cup of coffee. Then the routine took over, opening the fridge, cracking an egg, setting a pan, salt and pepper. Before long, there was a cup of coffee and scrambled eggs on the table, just for Fenno to realize he wasn't hungry at all. Leaving the plate on the table, Fenno returned to the light room, taking his steaming cup of coffee with him. The morning mists were slowly rising above the bay as the first rays of sunlight pierced the morning sky. Taking in the beauty of the view, he sighed. While there was an element of honor and pride in his work, he looked forward to reaping the fruits of his labor. He retrieved a photo from his pocket once taken nearly 15 years ago. A Fenno in a flowery shirt, standing on a beach with a coconut in his hand. Closing his eyes, he felt the sand grind between his toes and tasted pina colada on his tongue. Freedom and warmth. Yes, just a few more weeks, and he'd be on the beach again. For the next 2 hours, Fenno watched the coast. Lately, the work felt like the most useless thing in the world, since most ships had no reason to even come close to Raff Island anymore. Still, watching the white foam break and slowly wash over the cliffs was a mesmerizing sight. The midday was approaching, yet hunger still evaded him. In fact, he only got reminded of food by the sound of the delivery car's tires rolling on the gravel outside. He peeked out the window, noticing that it was the young one. He was new and always tripping over his words. Fenno liked to welcome him with the widest smile he could muster to make his day better. The curly-haired ginger rolled out of the old Fiat and grabbed Fenno's lunch from the back seat. When he turned toward the door, which Fenno had just opened, his face turned grey, contrasting the bright red hair. Fenno closed the door and the delivery man shrieked, dropped the delivery on the ground and rushed back to his car. "Hey, boy," Fenno called after him, but got nothing in response besides another shriek and panicked fragments of words the delivery man was spitting as he jumped into the front seat and, in a spray of rubble, drove away. "The youngsters these days," Fenno said, confused, picking the ruined food from the ground. Back inside, Fenno lit the fireplace. Felt strange in August, but being cold felt worse. He added some leftover chicken to a bowl of dog food and placed it beside his cushioned chair. "Hey, Chaplin, chap?" No sound of pause came. "What's going on with my boy today?" Fenno said, leaving him be. A fly landed on Chaplin's bowl, and then another. And Fenno noticed a handful more flying around. Picking up an old newspaper, he managed to strike one, and then another down, but quickly realized there was too many to hunt them all. The day moved on with a light cleanup of the grounds, then a test of the air horn, blown twice in rapid succession to make sure everyone knew it was just a drill. The maintenance and keeping the logs used to be his favorite part, but he was well aware of how mundane and pointless it was. The company was likely waiting for his retirement so they could automate the lighthouse like all the others, or maybe close it completely. The last keeper. Fenno shook his head. He was an honest man who swore to keep the lighthouse going. He'd continued to do so. When the sun sank into the ocean, Fenno watched the hues of red and orange dancing and glittering on the ocean's surface. It was beautiful. He lit the beam for the night and headed for the bedroom, hoping to force Chaplin for a walk before they turned to bed. He noticed some of the lights flickering as he passed them, but decided to leave that particular issue for another day. The German shepherd lay in front of his door, waggling his tail when he saw Fedor coming. "Good boy, come on now," Fedor said. But again, Chaplin stood his ground, rubbing his paw at the bedroom door. "What is it, boy? What do you want there?" Fedor asked, and opened his bedroom door. An overwhelming buzz washed over him as dozens of flies flew out of the room. Damn flies. One glance over to the dark room showed nothing, but Chaplin ran up to the bed and pulled the blanket down, revealing Fedor's body lying there, with another swarm of flies circling the body. Fedor blinked. Chaplin ran round him, trying to push him as if to say, "There are two of you." But Fedor didn't move. He stood there, watching his own frail bones, lifeless. The night turned into day again, and Fedor did not know what to do. So he extinguished the light, sounded the horn, fed Chaplin, then watched his body decay. Day and night, he stood lonely in a tower that was his home for 30 years. Nobody came. The delivery man left the food by the door, then sprinted away right after. The owner didn't call. On the 5th day, Fedor stopped tending the light. It was 3 more days before anyone noticed. The manager came in a day later, dressed in a fine suit. He complained about the smell and called the police. It took him less than 10 minutes to call the company to say that this object is closing down, and they'll probably sell the land anyway. Fedor listened to all of that. Nobody could see or hear him, except for Chaplin. Chap was a good boy to the very end. He growled and barked, trying to stop the police from removing the remains. But he wasn't in his prime either. Chap's last disheartened howl echoed from the back of the truck as he headed towards the shelter. The lighthouse was empty and silent. No words, no tears, nothing. Fedor's ghost stood at the top of the lighthouse, clutching the picture from the beach. 30 years sacrificed for a vision of freedom, only to be rewarded with cold winds and a prison. Fedor's remnant continued to roam the now closed lighthouse. His dreams of freedom long gone, lost to the promise of a reality that never came. Work well, and you'll be rewarded at the end. If there's anything to be learned from Fedor's story, it's this. Live for yourself, not for duty and delayed dreams. You never know when the doors of the Midnight Vault might open and take you in. Thank you for reading. So if you like that one, head over to the fiction dealer, Miguel Stepan, or Miguel S, as he is on here, and have a read of his story. I will tag them in the replay as well. And let's see. So what I thought I might do, don't know if Murphy's still here. I can't see the comments. I might have a go at reading mine. Let me know if you want me to read mine. I can't see the comments, so let's see. Bear with me. No good at tablets. Right. Let's go to Substack. I didn't put mine on my Kindle because I wasn't expecting to read it. Right, is everybody still here? I don't know. It keeps saying my signal is dropping out. Got a nosy dog just at the door, trying to come in. But she's going to distract me, so. I'll tell you what, it feels weird when you see yourself as live. Well, you're live. Right, let's see. Blackbird. Okay. Right, let's do this. Okay, so this is the one that I came up with for the Midnight Vault 2 and nearly quit because it wasn't finished. But we got there in the end. Go and lie down. Go and lie down. Go on. Right, sorry about that. She doesn't want to know me any other time of the day, but when I'm on a Substack live, she wants to come in. Right, Blackbird. Mother, what is that? His little fingers jabbed the screen, focusing her attention on the dog in the photograph. She didn't know what kind it was, but it was a large one, with the same docile smile that most dogs had in photos. Its pink tongue was hanging from its mouth. She stared a moment before answering. The hum of the Aves system grew louder as the little robotic bird hovered around them. Its red eyes flashed as it took an account of the room and its occupants. Mrs. Green leaned towards the console and looked at the image again. That's a dog, she said. Can we get a dog? No. Why? The Department of Family informed her that the child would eventually grow out of the age of questioning everything, but that she should entertain questions to help him develop a strong brain for his future of work. According to the documents sent home with him as an infant, the boy was excused for the content of his questions until he was 16 years of age. Her job was to guide him towards asking permitted questions as he grew older. Although he didn't ask as many as he used to, his questions surprised her. She wondered if all children were surprising, because even though the images would have emotionally compromised people, the child was still unnaturally curious about them and their animal. They're extinct now, she said. Why? They did not pass the efficiency evaluation. Why not? She sighed and sat down beside her young son. Our people have come this far because efficiency was our most valuable asset. Dogs, and all animals that were once called pets, distracted us from working, as we have to feed and care for them. They give nothing of value back, so they did not pass the efficiency evaluation. Do you understand now? He nodded, his large brown eyes still staring at her. Am I efficient? Not at the moment, but when you become an adult, you will be. She stroked his black hair. You will work and serve this great nation. You will take on the roles that your parents did before you. And what about you and Dad? She smiled and stood up again. That is enough about the future, son. Please return to your history homework. He turned his face back to the screen and continued to click through the images, his retina scanning and downloading the information. Mother! She returned to the console. Yes? This family has 2 children. It does. Why? Because their parents did not respect the law of efficiency. If you move to the next slide, you'll see that they died of poverty in the wastelands. Oh. He swiped to the next image and tilted his head as he studied the emaciated corpses burning on a pile of general waste. One held a little doll in its arms. He wanted a doll too. He wanted everything. One child is enough to maintain efficiency, son. Oh, okay. Is that all for now? Yeah. Are you sure? Yeah. She waited for Aves to begin its routine scan of the entire house. Its little black body was absent, presenting her with an opportunity. She quickly ran down the hall and went into the bathroom. Behind the quietly closed door, Mrs. Green slumped down into a blubbering, red-faced heap. His stomach muscles contracted as the tears and sobs overwhelmed her. The unmistakable buzz of Aves came right up close to the door, hovering around the keyhole, sending a little beam of red light through the gap. She gasped. She was not on the toilet. She grabbed some tissue from the roll holder and stuffed it into the keyhole. The robot's buzzing faded away. It would try again in a minute, until the routine scan was complete. She had minutes. She raced through all of the options in her mind, each one reminding her of him. Where was he now? Probably dead, or lobotomized. She didn't know which was worse. She held her breath again. There was someone behind the door. Mother is just having privacy. Please go back to your work. She didn't hear anything, so she put her head to the floor and looked under the door. His feet were still there. Adam, please go back to your homework. He said nothing, but she lay on the floor and watched the little feet turn around and walk away. She got back up and leaned against the door. She looked up at the clock above the toilet. Any moment now, it was going to flash red when it had determined an unnecessary amount of time had been spent in the bathroom, and they would send someone out to assess her. That would be one assessment too many. Gemma Green had been awarded a biological child because her parents and their parents before them had proven competence and genetic superiority. She would not lose him now. This was a test, and as she did with all tests, she would pass. She went to the sink to splash her face with cold water. Dabbing her damp skin on the towel, she took one last look at herself in the mirror, a deep breath entering her lungs. You are exemplary, she said to herself in the mirror, steadying her breath. Exemplary woman. You will get your son back. A Tuesday, 1 year before. It started when she found the papers. Ivo, what is this? She held out the sheets of paper as though it were toilet roll he'd just wiped his arse with and left for her to find. Oh, you found them, thank you. He took them from her and rearranged them on the desk. She watched, fascinated, but frightened nonetheless. What is it? Her frown changed from disgust to fear. You found my writing? This isn't writing. It makes no sense. The sentences don't link up as they should. Where are the agreements? What is the purpose of this? Where did it come from? She was going to cry. Repulsion, fear, confusion. She didn't know. It was simply a surge of pressure threatening to release itself through her eyes. This was no exemplary behaviour. She shut it down. He appeared to know what she was thinking. You can relax in here, he said with a sardonic smile, gesturing to the soundproofing on the walls. There are no prizes for letting your hair down, but it's worth it. I wrote these myself. She covered her mouth in horror. What? Why would you do that? Because I wanted to. He shrugged. It felt good. This will lose us our efficiency credits, she began. And you know how irresponsible that would be? Her bottom lip lost all foundation again. This is dangerous. Her breathing, erratic like never before, forced her to sit down in the chair. We have a child, Ivo. Think of him. I do think of him. And as his father, I think I have a right to bring poetry into his life. This wasn't the agreement. She was right. It was not the agreement. Marriages in the district were outperforming those in other districts, thanks to efficiency measures introduced a century earlier. Humanity, like the bacteria it depended on for survival, would compose its own form of binary fission. Those who agreed with the changes grew in one way, and those who did not grew in another, somewhere else. The Greens were too young to remember the protests or the relocation of the extremists. They had been protected by the good father, and out of respect, efficiency was a priority. Mrs. Green didn't know poetry, and she didn't want to. She only knew what she'd been trained to do, raise a human child, and a superior one at that. She studied the man she'd been paired with for a stronger chance of a successful conception. Overall, she'd been very happy with the Department of Family's choice of Ivo Green. Even with his hearing impairment, his genetic strength and intellect scan brought him into the top 1% of compatible partners. Successfully raised by parents who'd come from a long line of successful genetic pairings, Ivo was a model husband and father. His semen, checked and tested before the marriage was permitted by the state, provided Mrs. Green with 3 viable embryos. She was proud of herself, something to put on her CV. The others, she hoped, would go to another family who shared her values. Her values were exemplary, as it said on her record. They ate dinner together that evening, Mrs. Green choosing to pretend the incident with the papers hadn't happened. If her husband were to sabotage the family unit, she was certain that the state would give her sole custody after considering just how exemplary she was. Perhaps Ivo was a test. Perhaps he was a short-term feature in the household. There was no questioning, only testing. Preparing food cost 2 efficiency credits per meal, so the Greens used their printer instead. Ivo leaned over his bowl of nondescript sustenance, his shoulders sinking. It would be nice to eat something else, he muttered, watching the grey puree drop from his spoon back into the bowl. His son watched and started doing the same. I would like to eat something else, like steak or fish pie. Father and son's eyes met, the latter smiling at his father's facial expressions. Mrs. Green, refusing to take the bait, rolled her shoulders back. This is a more efficient use of our time. What steak, Daddy? It's a piece of cow. Cow? Ivo. Yes, son. We used to eat meat from animals, fish from the sea, and vegetables from the ground, or Ivo, she said again, almost choking on the fear. Please, she said, lowering her voice through gritted teeth. Not now. Dinner is the perfect time for family conversation. I agree, but we're not talking about that. Whatever you say, Mrs. Green. He said no more, and thought instead of what she might have looked like naked. He wondered what it would have been like if they conceived their son naturally. His thoughts often lingered here, and they were growing stronger. She didn't have to be beautiful, but she was. He swallowed some more of the grey food and dismissed himself from the table. His wife and son didn't say anything. Mrs. Green saw him again 2 hours later in the doorway of her room. He'd never been in there, nor had he ever tried to cross the boundary. He looked over her shoulder. Can I help you, Ivo? She asked, folding her arms so he couldn't see her breasts through the corporation nightgown. His shirt was unbuttoned. She tried not to look at the black mark under his left collarbone. But it was strange. She absorbed it in her peripheral as he spoke, believing he had her full attention. I wondered how you sleep. Why? You're my wife. Don't you think it's strange how we live so separately? That isn't strange, Ivo. It's how we all live. What's got into you? Do you want to have sex, Gemma? Hearing her first name made her feel strange. The sound of her name gave her a tingling sensation, and it surprised her. She folded her arms even tighter. Her nipples would give her away. No! Good God, no! She said, rejecting the image in her mind. What's wrong with you? He straightened. It's odd, that's all. I've never had sex with a woman, and I think it's strange. She could see more of the mark. It was a tattoo, and she'd never seen one before, at least, not in reality. She would not let curiosity endanger her, and she moved back to start closing the door. Ivo, go to bed, or I'll have to call Dr. Ibrahim. Fine. He turned away from her and headed down the corridor. He passed his son's room and peered in. The boy slept soundly, his face a picture of seraphic calm. The stars projected onto his wall and ceiling, circling the room. Ivo stopped for a moment and felt a pang of what? He wasn't sure. He silently rushed back down to the basement to think about it. Wednesday. He discovered her rummaging in the basement. Hello, he said, trying not to sound threatened. She jumped and turned around, eyes as wide as those of a poorly skilled thief caught red-handed. Ivo, I was. She couldn't find the words. He smiled. He'd always insisted she call him Ivo, and she insisted that he always addressed her as Mrs. Green. It's all right, he said. Feel free to look around. What is all this? My study. I didn't know you. How do you find the time? I make it. He was more efficient than she thought. You should let your employers know that you're so freed up. That's a terrible idea. I do what is asked of me, and that's that. Everything else is mine. She didn't know what to say, so she didn't say anything. She stood, fidgeting with her fingers. Do you want to see my drawings? She didn't answer, but she let him reach the top shelf of a bookcase. He moved several state-issued manuals out of the way and retrieved a vintage scrapbook. Its imperfections were alluring, and she couldn't believe he'd made it himself. He flipped it open and presented it to her. This one is a blackbird. She looked down at the drawing of the creature. It seemed so familiar, but she couldn't place it. Did you imagine this? He laughed slightly, smiling at her. She'd never noticed his dimples before. No, they're real, she gasped. It was a dangerous thought, but she enjoyed the thrill. Ivo, she asked, lowering her voice, why is there no surveillance in here? I have my ways. How long have you been breaking the law? Since Adam was born, more or less. Adam. The child that had brought them together to live in shared accommodation. Can I ask why? He admired her bravery. Only if you're sure. She could have gone back up the stairs and reported him to the authorities. Her record alone would allow her to maintain her custody of their child. It wouldn't be ideal, but there would be solutions. Instead, she stood there, making friends for the first time in her life. She nodded, listening to Ivo talk about something as unusual as birds. They sing, they're songbirds. What do they sound like? I don't know. He shrugged. She felt the heat radiating in her cheeks. Oh, Ivo, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. No, I know what you meant. They only pick up human voices. He moved a hand to the side of his head and felt the implant with his fingers. It lay hidden under short, curly hair. It's to help me stay efficient. So where do you get your images from to copy? I don't copy them. I've seen them. So had she. Under his collarbone, a blackbird. Thursday. Mrs. Farmer at work told her that they'd taken him away in a van. He'd been on his way to work. There was no trial, only discussion. No discussion. Officers from the council visited her to interview her about her daily life and mental state, of which she satisfied them enough for it to remain once a week. The basement remained concealed behind a storage unit. Ivo's things remained untouched by prying hands. For that, nothing else happened. Every afternoon, she returned home to her child, and every evening they did his homework at the console. It was when she was alone in her room that she learned of the world outside and what had happened to Ivo. It started with a simple note slipped under the back door of the house. It said, Console in waste dispenser, Blackbird. She waited, peering through the crack of her door for that final bleep. Shut down. All doors locked, all equipment switched off, even Ava's. 1 potato, 2 potato, 3 potato. Where had she heard that before? Her eyes welled up. Ivo. Everything strange and forgotten fell from his mouth on a daily basis. And she'd ignored him. All these years, she'd ignored him. The husband, the male figure, The donor. The bleep snapped her out of her guilt, and she ran to the kitchen, pulling the handle of the dispenser open. There it was. She quickly slipped it into her cardigan pocket and raced back to her room, almost giggling with how dangerous it was. Under the covers, she opened the console. It required a password. She stared for a moment and remembered the note. She typed in the word, Blackbird. Hi, Gemma. It was Ivo on the tiny screen. Fitting well, and with a beard now. I'm sorry for never truly being honest with you, but I'm sure you understand I was taking a risk in telling you anything. If you find this, it's because you've put your trust in me. What I'm about to tell you is distressing, but often the most painful words are the ones we avoid hearing. The rarity of truth can be attributed to its unique way of not sparing anyone's feelings. Truth will spare none now. Whatever I say, this does not make you any less of an exemplary woman. That stung. It felt like mockery. I want you to read about the Holloway case after this video. The file is in the top corner of this screen. Once you have all of the information, the console needs to go in the incinerator. She listened attentively. She listened to everything, no matter what she felt. Please let me wash your hair, she said, following Adam into the bathroom. I washed it yesterday. You have lice. They wouldn't argue with that. He got into the shower, and with the water in his eyes, he couldn't see that her hands were shaking. She took the pliers out of her pocket with one hand, washing his hair with the other. If she was wrong, they'd take him away for good. Ow, Mother, your head! She pushed his head against the wall and applied the pliers. 1, 2, it was out. She held it to her face in horror, inspecting the evil thing. Bastards, she said under her breath as she looked down at the bleeding wound at the side of the boy's head. I'm so sorry, Adam. He was sobbing uncontrollably, the shampoo in his eyes adding to the discomfort. She crushed the spyware under her shoe and held him, soaking her own clothes in the process. I'm so sorry. I can't see. She rinsed the shampoo out of his eyes and dried him with the towel. I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. She couldn't stop crying. She let them do this to him. She'd let them take him away for routine procedures, never questioning what they were doing. Exemplary woman. The Holloway child had been bugged because the Department of Family suspected violation of the terms. The Holloway child, held over their parents' heads, was a test. Adam had become a test. Adam was the first test she would fail. We're going away, Adam, she said, cradling him. We're going away to somewhere else. The wasteland? If that's what it takes. They left as soon as the shutdown ended. She hoped he would be all right in the booth. It was going to take a couple of hours to get to safety, but they had 20 minutes to get out of the district. Ivo had explained that every data center in the district required downtime, and in those windows she could run. This was the first one of the day. She held the steering wheel steadily, trying to think of anything else in order to keep her knuckles from turning white. 1 potato, 2 potato, 3 potato. She pushed the accelerator down as hard as she could, remembering to change gear when the engine sounded overloaded. She'd almost forgotten how to drive. She laughed at herself and thought back to the efficiency certificate she'd framed on the wall for exemplary walking. All meaningless now. She shook her head and looked around at the morning unfolding on the road before her, and quietly thanked whoever was listening for its emptiness. No one was coming. Her eyes flitted to the rearview mirror and back, over and over again. No one. She looked ahead. It didn't seem so bad. Concrete waste became straggly vines, embracing old railway sleepers and abandoned vehicles. The further she travelled, the greener it became. They don't guard the West Gate. Not only is it just the waste disposal firms who work there and the pollution, But they know that if they can make you frightened of yourself, why the hell would you leave? Genius, really, Ivo had said in the recording. She felt silly. Wow, Gemma, you really are exemplary. She had been exactly that, frightened of her own instincts, her own thoughts, and her own feelings. She slowed when she found what she was looking for and dared to ask, what if I'm wrong? What would they do if she'd taken state property out of the district? The further she was from the walls, the more she realized that it was nonsense. He was her child. She stopped under a canopy of trees and got out of the car. This had to be the spot. A single red scarf flapped on a branch above. She opened the boot and lifted Adam out. He'd been sleeping somehow, his pillow under his head still. The wind was brisk, so she helped him to put his jacket on. The wound was healing, but it angered her every time she saw it. Ivo told her everything. They stick an implant in the kid. The parents don't notice at first because the manual says they naturally stop wanting to create things. They stop asking questions. Wonder dies out on their lips. She felt sick and thought of the drawings she'd disposed of without a second thought. He'd made them without any instruction, any praise, just an inherent need to please his mother. He didn't understand it. None of them did. Why does the Blackbird sing his heart out every morning? Ivo had asked, loading the dishwasher. She didn't know anything about birds or nature. Ivo, with a permanent patience in his face, gave her a wistful smile and said, because that's just what he does. She held her son's hand as she led him to the clearing, her heart threatening to choke her as it rose up her throat. Something about the boy's trusted grip reassured her. The men in the grey camouflage saw them coming and gestured for them to follow, their rifles aimed at the trees behind them. The ease of the meeting frightened her. They could be anyone. It could be a test. The brushing of their legs against the long grass became the loudest sound in the world. The birds in the trees overhead called to them in strange voices, but they were drowned out the closer they came to the watchtower. There were people back there. Lots of people. And dogs. She wanted to turn back. She'd be sent to the wastelands for this. She looked down at her son and panicked. She bent down to scoop him back up, but something ran out of the bushes and lunged at them. Adam laughed excitedly. Gemma stepped back. It was a dog. A dog, wagging its tail and circling them with a few excitable barks. Adam, Ivo called. Gemma looked up and saw him moving through the long grass. He wore the same uniform as the rest of the resistance. He approached them and ruffled his son's hair. Tell your dog to sit. The end. Oh, God, my arms are aching now after holding that tablet up. So that was 3 Midnight Vault stories. The Lobby, I want to say Lonely Lighthouse, it's gone. Miguel S. Done him as well. I'll tag him in the video replay. And Blackbird by yours truly. I'm losing my memory now. So yeah, we've got 3 done. I think not bad for an hour's work. Can't see any comments, so apologies in advance if, let's see, watch. Here's where I press a button and they all appear. Right, okay. I've got a comment from Mirth. Thank you. Thank you. No, I think you have to press a button and then they all appear. Didn't know that. But that's it for tonight. What I will do is I'll get this off and then maybe tomorrow I'll do another hour, but I'll definitely do a couple more hours with some of these European UK stories, maybe the occasional American one. Who knows? Let's see what happens. And I'll upload them all and you can see them linked and listen to them at your convenience. But that's all for tonight. I need to go and have a glass of wine because it is Saturday. Yeah, gotta enjoy the weekend. So I will see you soon. Thank you for joining me. I'll catch you around on Superstack.